The woman peeled the apple with a paring knife, turning it slowly in her hand. Rural Japan, 1955. The skin came off in a single spiral, dropping into a bowl for the pigs. She cut the flesh into sections, removing the core. Her daughter sat across from her, shelling beans from the garden. The pile grew slowly. Each pod needed opening. Each bean needed releasing. This would be part of the evening meal. The apple sliced thin over rice, the beans boiled with a little salt and miso. The preparation took time. Not because they were being careful, because food came this way, whole, intact, requiring effort to become edible. No one in the household counted calories, and no one was obese. This wasn't isolated to Japan. In rural France, in Ethiopian highlands, in Andean villages, in Thai fishing communities, populations eating traditional diets showed the same pattern. They consumed food to satiety, sometimes abundantly. They ate rice, bread, potatoes, foods now called fattening. They used oil and butter. They ate meat when they could afford it. And yet, obesity was rare, not absent but uncommon enough to be notable. This wasn't genetics. Immigrants from these populations gained weight rapidly when they adopted Western diets. It wasn't portion control. No one was measuring. It wasn't restriction. Meals were often generous, sometimes celebratory. Something else was regulating intake, something invisible. This wasn't accidental. When researchers began studying the global rise in obesity in the 1980s and 90s, they focused on what people were eating. Too many calories, too much fat, too many carbohydrates. The solution seemed straightforward. Eat less, move more, count and restrict. But the data revealed something strange. Populations in the 1950s consumed similar, sometimes higher, caloric amounts compared to populations in the 1990s. Japanese farmers, Italian laborers, Greek fishermen, they ate substantial meals. They weren't starving themselves, but their bodies stopped at sufficiency, not through willpower, through signal. Modern populations, eating foods that seemed similar on paper, couldn't find the same stopping point. They ate past fullness. They stayed hungry after meals. They gained weight despite trying not to. The question wasn't why ancient people ate less. It was why modern people couldn't tell when they'd eaten enough. What mattered wasn't belief. It was results. And the results suggested we'd changed something fundamental about food itself. We optimized for shelf life and profit margin. That's the simple answer. In the mid-20th century, food companies faced a problem. How do you make products that last months in warehouses and homes, taste consistent across batches, and maximize profit per unit? The answer was processing. Strip away water. It causes spoilage. Remove fiber. It's bulky and cheap. Add sugar and fat in precise ratios. They're calorie-dense and enhance palatability. Engineer texture. Make it dissolve quickly, require no chewing. The result? Foods that could sit on shelves indefinitely, tasted reliably good, and delivered maximum calories in minimum volume. It worked commercially. It failed biologically. Here's what we measured. Calories, macronutrients, vitamin content, price per serving. Here's what we didn't. Satiety per calorie, time to consume, chewing requirement, water content, fiber density, hormone response. The Japanese woman peeling an apple wasn't thinking about any of this, but the apple, in its whole form, already contained every signal her body needed to know when to stop eating. This is where modern systems struggle. What prevented obesity in traditional diets wasn't a rule someone invented. It was a structure inherent to whole foods. Break it into principles. Principle 1. Volume to calorie ratio. An apple weighs roughly 200 grams. It contains about 100 calories. To eat 500 calories of apples, you'd need to consume 5 apples, over 2 pounds of food. Your stomach would physically fill before you could overconsume. Now compare 500 calories of apple juice. That's roughly 16 ounces. 1 tall glass. No chewing, no fiber, no physical fullness. The calories enter the bloodstream rapidly, spike insulin, and leave you hungry again within an hour. Same source. Radically different outcome. Traditional diets were built on whole foods with high volume relative to calories, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, fruits, tubers. These foods took up space. They filled the stomach. They triggered stretch receptors that signaled satiety before caloric excess was possible. You could eat to fullness, true physical fullness, and still land within a reasonable caloric range. What happens when you remove this? You get calorie-dense foods that occupy minimal stomach volume. Crackers, chips, pastries, candy, processed cheese, refined oils. You can consume 1,000 calories before your stomach registers fullness, and by the time it does, you've already overshot your body's energy needs by hours. The satiety signal arrives late, sometimes not at all. Principle 2. The effort barrier. The woman shelling beans wasn't just preparing food, she was creating a consumption barrier. Each bean required a small action. Pod opened, bean removed, repeat. By the time a bowl was full, 20 minutes had passed. Eating them required cooking, chewing, time. The meal took effort to prepare and effort to consume. This wasn't inconvenient, it was regulatory. When food requires work, you eat less of it. Not because you restrict, but because the effort creates natural limits. Modern food engineering removed effort entirely. Pre-shelled, pre-cooked, pre-cut, pre-seasoned. Open the package. Eat. No preparation time, no cooling period, no delay between wanting and consuming. Snack foods go further. They dissolve on contact. No chewing needed. Chips, cheese puffs, cookies designed to break down instantly. You can eat them faster than your brain can register you're eating them. The 15-minute delay between eating and satiety signaling collapses. You consume portions in 3 minutes that would have taken 30 in their whole form. This is what convenience replaced. Principle 3. Water and fiber as built-in portion control. Whole foods are mostly water and fiber. An orange is 87% water. A potato is 79% water. Cabbage is 92% water. Fiber doesn't get digested. It adds bulk without calories. Together, water and fiber create a paradox. The food weighs a lot. It fills you up, but it doesn't deliver excessive energy. Traditional meals were volumetrically large but calorically modest. A bowl of vegetable stew with beans and whole grain bread could weigh a pound and contain 400 calories. You'd feel full, satisfied. Your body would signal completion. Processing inverts this. Remove the water. Remove the fiber. What remains is energy concentrate. A handful of dried fruit has the calories of 6 fresh fruits, but none of the volume. A tablespoon of oil has the calories of several pounds of olives, but none of the satiety. The calories are real. The fullness is gone. And the body, which evolved to gauge intake by stomach volume, can't calibrate correctly. Satiety wasn't something ancient people maintained through discipline. It was embedded in the food itself. But we'll come back to why that mattered. Why modern life struggles. The average ultra-processed food is engineered to bypass natural satiety mechanisms. This isn't conspiracy, it's product design. Food scientists discovered that certain combinations trigger maximal palatability, the bliss point, sugar, fat, and salt in precise ratios, textures that dissolve quickly, flavors that create wanting without satisfaction. The goal is simple: make people eat more, not through force, through food structure. And it works. Studies show people consume 500 more calories per day when given ultra-processed foods compared to whole foods, even when both are available in unlimited quantities. It's not willpower, it's signal disruption. The consequences accumulate slowly. Hunger that returns an hour after eating, cravings that feel urgent and specific, weight gain that happens despite conscious efforts to eat less. Constant mental negotiation around food. What to eat, how much, when to stop. Energy crashes. Blood sugar swings. Dependency on regular snacking just to feel normal. These aren't moral failures. They're biological responses to food that's been structurally altered to encourage overconsumption. The Japanese woman eating rice and vegetables didn't think about portions. Her food stopped her naturally. The fiber filled her stomach. The water added weight without calories. The act of chewing took time. Her body's satiety hormones had space to catch up to her intake. She ate until she was satisfied. Then she stopped. Not because she was disciplined, because the food allowed her to stop. Modern eaters, surrounded by calorie-dense, low-volume foods, can't rely on the same signals. The food doesn't stop them. It encourages continuation. This is where fragility enters. It wasn't stupidity that created ultra-processed foods. It was economics. In the early 1900s, food spoilage was a massive problem. Grain went moldy, vegetables rotted, meat spoiled, milk soured. Families lost portions of their food supply regularly. Cities struggled to keep populations fed. The solution was preservation: canning, drying, refining, freezing. These technologies worked. They reduced waste. They allowed food to travel. They made nutrition accessible year-round. But preservation required processing, and processing required removing the very elements that regulated appetite: water, fiber, structural integrity. What remained was stable, transportable, and profitable.
The industry optimized further. White flour lasts longer than whole grain. It's lighter to ship. It makes fluffier bread that consumers prefer. White rice lasts longer than brown rice. It cooks faster. It's less chewy. Sugar and oil are shelf-stable indefinitely. They're cheap. They enhance flavor and texture. Each modification made commercial sense. Each removed the satiety signal. And by the 1970s, the average diet was built on foods that had been stripped, refined, and reconstituted. The calories were real. The nutrients were often added back. But the structure, the thing that told bodies when to stop, was gone. By the 1980s, obesity rates began climbing, not because people suddenly became lazy or gluttonous, but because the food supply had fundamentally changed. The same breakfast that would have been oatmeal with fruit became a bowl of refined cereal with skim milk. The same lunch that would have been bread, cheese, and vegetables became a sandwich on white bread with processed meat and chips. The same dinner that would have been rice, beans, and vegetables became pasta with Jared sauce and garlic bread. Calorically similar on paper, structurally unrecognizable. And the body, tried to regulate intake using signals that no longer existed, couldn't compensate. Why this knowledge is returning? It started with research. In the 2010s, studies began isolating ultra-processed foods as a unique category. Not just junk food, but any food that had been industrially formulated from refined ingredients. The findings were stark. The more ultra-processed food in a diet, the higher the obesity risk. Independent of calorie intake, independent of exercise. People eating whole foods naturally consume fewer calories without trying. People eating ultra-processed foods naturally consume more, even when told not to. It wasn't about willpower or education. It was about food structure. Now, there's a quiet movement. Whole food advocates. Traditional diet enthusiasts. People eliminating packaged foods not because of calories, but because of how those foods behave in the body. They're rediscovering what their great-grandparents knew without naming. Whole foods regulate themselves. Practical translation. You don't need to eat like someone from 1955 to understand what worked. You just need to recognize the principles. Prioritize foods that still resemble their source. An orange over orange juice. A potato over potato chips. Oats over granola bars. Beans over bean dip. The closer food is to its whole form, the more intact its satiety signals remain. This isn't purity. It's structure. Let volume and fiber do the work portion control used to do. Fill half your plate with vegetables, any kind, cooked or raw. Eat fruit instead of drinking it. Choose whole grains over refined when possible. These aren't rules. They're leveraging the natural satiety that whole foods provide. You don't need to count. The food counts for you. Notice the difference between satisfaction and fullness. Whole foods create satisfaction, a sense of completion, of having eaten enough. Processed foods create fullness, physical distension without satisfaction. That's why you can feel stuffed and still want more. The signals are different. Relearning to recognize true satisfaction takes time, but it's recognizable once you know what to notice. Recognize that food structure isn't optional. Your body evolved to regulate intake based on volume, chewing time, fiber content, and water. When those elements are removed, regulation fails. Not because you lack discipline, because the feedback system is broken. Even partial adoption changes outcomes. The apple is peeled, sliced thin, arranged on a small plate. It sits on the table, ordinary and complete. No one in this household is counting calories. No one is restricting. They're just eating food that still looks like food. And when they've had enough, their bodies tell them. Quietly, reliably, the way bodies have for millennia. Modern research is now confirming what traditional eaters never needed to prove. Satiety isn't about willpower. It's about structure. Obesity isn't about moral failure. It's about signal disruption. And the body, remarkably capable, still responds to whole foods the way it always has, with natural regulation. We didn't lose this system because it failed. We lost it because we built a food supply that optimized for everything, except what bodies actually need to know when to stop. And now we're relearning. Shelf stability isn't the same as biological compatibility. The old way wasn't perfect, but it was self-regulating. And self-regulation across centuries is what kept populations lean without effort.